Hello, dear friends. Welcome to this program, Moments with God, where I share with you my simple and humble reflections on the daily Mass readings, or if there is an important saint in the Catholic calendar about his or her life, like I did last Saturday on the life of Maria Goretti and earlier on the birth of John the Baptist, and with the hope that this will acquaint us more and more about the Christian authentic life, about the lives of saints, and particularly the words of Jesus and of the Old Testament, so that they will help us in our spiritual search for God and to make a connection and even a relationship with God, or eventually even a friendship with God. And if you are interested to subscribe to this channel, you may please do that now. And if you like the video, you may please also share it with others so that others also take advantage of it. Thank you very much. As you see, today I have not chosen nature or natural setting of trees and greeneries. Rather, I'm standing before the door of a church. As you can see, it's a huge church, but in my frame I cannot get the whole church and me and do the self recording. Therefore, I am taking only a small portion of the church, and there is a particular reason for why I have taken a church building of stone uh, for us today, because today, the 11th of July, is the feast of Saint Benedict. Saint Benedict, who lived in the late was born in the late 5th century around 480 and died in the 6th century around 547. So we are talking almost of a saint who lived almost 1600 years ago. But Saint Benedict is one of the patrons of Europe, because Europe is supposed to be a Christian culture, and he is supposed to have Christianized Europe and brought a Christian culture in Europe. Anyway, first of all, let us say who Saint Benedict was. Saint Benedict was born in Italy, in a place in Norcia, and his parents sent him to Rome for studies. So Rome was, of course, already famous. It had an old culture, and Roman Empire was famous. So there were good schools in Rome. So he was sent there. But by that time, Rome was also decaying and getting not anymore that imperial look, and the imperial impression that it used to have was dwindling. Then came uh, Benedict, but Benedict was also disappointed with the way things were in Rome, and he wanted to then lead a more spiritual and pious life. So he went to some mountains and started living with some monks, and those monks were telling him about the Christian life and about following Jesus more closely, etc. But he was not then also fully satisfied with them. So he went further to a more lonely place and went finally into a cave somewhere in Subiaco, and then he was surrounded by some disciples. And when he was surrounded by disciples, he started teaching them. And in this cave, he found this small community and formed a kind of a convent, or a cloister, you can say, where he started living this monastic life. And he is considered by some as the father of monastic life in the West. Remember that monastic life had already begun in the desert in Egypt with Antony the Great, who lived earlier than this, and then there was Origen, and there were other monks who lived a very serious life, but that was more towards the east of Europe. But for us in India, it would be more of the Middle East, in Egypt and the areas or little north of Egypt, Israel and Palestine and that area. But Benedict began more of monastic life in the West, and therefore he is known as the father of monastic life, began almost 1600 years ago. He is supposed to have founded then 12 monasteries, and in each monastery he placed 12 monks. Once 12 monks were gathered, then he would go and open another monastery, and similarly he would go on founding various monasteries, and he founded 12 monasteries. The biggest monastery of his time was Monte Cassino, which still exists and is a huge Benedictine monastery. I may just tell you that in Austria and largely in Europe as well as in America, there are a lot of Benedictine monasteries, and they are huge, huge monasteries with many monks. Of course, the number of monks are now reducing all over Europe as well as in America, but I have visited the Benedictine or Cistercian monasteries or Trappist monasteries in America, where Thomas Merton lived, for example, and I have visited many Benedictine monasteries here which look like this, made in stone. So Saint Benedict lived in this cave, and I have visited this cave, which is about 40 miles away from Rome. I've been there 2 or 3 times, and it is fantastic, built on the rocks, and there is not even a foundation because it is all built on the mountains. And one interesting incident, if I may just add here, there is a rose bush outside this monastery which is still preserved, and they say, legend says, that this rose bush is maybe not the same, but at that time also there was a rose bush at that place. And it is said, the legend has it, that whenever Benedict had to face very strong temptations, especially the sexual type of temptations, he would mortify himself by coming and lying himself in the thorny rose bush, so that the rose thorns would pierce him and give him pain. That was to mortify himself against the temptations of the flesh. That is one of the things. But more important than that is his life in this cave, where he wrote the famous Benedictine rule, which is now followed all over, basically followed all over the world in all the Benedictine monasteries. This rule is supposed to be a wonderful rule book for monastic life, and basically this monastic rule divided the day in 3 parts. So about 5 hours to 6 hours are supposed to be spent in liturgical prayers. That means all the psalms of our what we call laudes and vespers. Of course, these are only 2 things that I am mentioning, but complete, and then the afternoon prayer, they are all Latin terminologies. But the Benedictine monks, sometimes they wake up at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning and begin their first morning prayer at that time, and that continues throughout the day with breaks, of course. So his rule was to spend about 5 to 6 hours in liturgical prayers together in a community, then about 5 hours of work, whether you work in the field or you work some intellectual work like writing, copying the manuscripts, the Old Testament, lives of the saints or of the early fathers and traditions of the church, etc. But 5 hours of study and work actually, and then another 5 hours of scripture reading or spiritual reading. So the basic rule was divided into 3 parts, and this is followed even to the day. And his main slogan was ora et labora, pray and work. So you don't only pray in the monasteries, but you also work in the monasteries. And work means not for the work for the sake of work, but this work should support yourself, should support the life in monastery, that you don't have to depend on others for your living. I'm sorry, my camera is a bit shaking. As you know, I am doing it all alone, and there is strong breeze here outside. So excuse me, but I just am so impressed by this church here. As you know, I have come out of my own place and doing these recordings in other places. May Saint Benedict inspire us, as it keeps on inspiring many monks, to do more time in prayer as well as work for our own survival and to help other people. And if you would like to subscribe to this channel, you may do it now. I wish you all the very best, and thank you.